So another thing with finding your space is, um, you need to, as you're, once you figured out what you're going to work on, whether it be an issue or a geographic thing or whatever, then you've got to start thinking about the broader landscape, right? What other organizations have overlap with the organization's goals and values in this organizing? These could go two ways, right? It could be a potential competitor, or it could be a natural ally, right? So, and electoralism is obviously the main place where we're going to run into competitors, right? Especially as like a Green in Illinois, a lot of times Democrats literally don't want us to exist. They have politically, repressed us off the ballot. And when campaign season gets in, I have had Democrats openly tell me that they support the Democratic Party doing everything it can to destroy the Green Party and every other left party because it takes their votes. Right, so that's a competition situation. Now that same person may be an ally on an issue, right? So we've got to think about these things. Are there areas, whether geographic or issue oriented, where there's a lack of organizing activity? What makes your organization unique and best suited for organizing in a given area or issue? And what are some threats to your organization's success and growth? What are some barriers that you have to overcome? Early on in the process of forming a local, I think it's really, or any organization, right? I'm on the board of a arts not-for-profit, and I'm trying to find a way to get everyone to sit down in a room for hours at a time and do a SWOT, right? And so SWOT, SWOT analysis is a way of thinking about your organization or thinking about a campaign, issue or political, and doing an analysis of what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, what are our opportunities, what are our threats. And this can help you figure out, ahead of time, what you need to navigate around, right? We talked about shooting from the hip, making you inefficient and ineffective. This is an example of how to avoid it, right? If you've done the research and you say, we're going to have to collect 30,000 signatures in 90 days to run for Congress, you can probably take that off your plate right away, right? Rather than getting somebody new coming in and they really want to run for Congress and they drag you into this, absolutely devastating petition drive that is almost doomed to fail from the beginning. And now everyone's dejected, right? In my local, unless someone has a really compelling reason for us to change our mind, we're not running for Congress, right? The level of repression, the level of threats that we have in that area are just too big to overcome without building ourselves much more, as an organization. So it's really important to think about these things. Otherwise, we're going to be going down dead ends. Otherwise, we're going to be going right into a brick wall that we might have known was there had we taken a second, right?
Yep.
I think it's important to say, don't dive too deep, right? Don't not organize because you're trying to do a SWOT, but also don't just run out like a chicken with its head cut off organizing, right? Don't blind organize. You've got to think about these things. And when we have these conversations about things like potential allied organizations, that gives us buttresses for our work if we can form those alliances. Thinking about like ranked choice voting and the group Fair Vote. In Illinois, we don't really have a good relationship with Fair Vote as Greens because they don't support ballot access equity. They call it a secondary issue. Well, ranked choice voting passing in Illinois means that you're going to get to rank a Republican and a Democrat, and that's it, right? I've talked a lot about how many petitions we have to collect, and if we're not on the ballot, we can't be ranked, right? So when we engage with rank the vote, what we're actually doing most of the time is trying to move them, right? They're a potential ally, but we're spending our time working with them on talking to them about ranked choice voting, not talking about how to pass what they want in Illinois, but talking about how what they want isn't democracy.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to move, right? And if we move them, now we've got a very powerful ally with national connections on the issue, right? And if you're somewhere like Colorado, you need 1,000 registered Greens, and you're on the ballot. Just ranked choice voting is a boon to them, right? Because they're already on the ballot. Pennsylvania is kind of in the middle, right? You got to collect about 5,000 signatures to get on the ballot. So it's a lift, but it's also a doable lift. You all just did it this year. So having these conversations, thinking about when you're working with other people, other organizations, what that relationship actually is, and how to move it to where you want it to be. Because when Rank the Vote first came to us in Illinois, or Fair Vote, sorry, not Rank the Vote.
Yeah,
when they're both Rank the Vote's a national thing, but when Fair Vote first came to us, they thought these guys are our allies, and their member basically got yelled out of the room, right? Because they didn't realize, they had no clue about ballot access. They never looked into it, so they didn't do this research, and they thought they were coming to a natural ally, and found a lot of criticism and critique. Right. So we've got to be able to make sure we're not doing that. We're not wasting that time, and we're coming into our conversations with the proper orientation so we can have successes.
Yeah. And see, that's a good example, I think, of setting really winnable goals. And that to me is part of the whole process of this, that when you're selecting your first issue and you're doing this power map and you're reaching people, you want to select something that you can win with your small team and relatively quickly, because it's the snowball effect that once you get a win, no matter how small it is, it could be like kind of the dumbest thing in the world, but if it's something you can claim as a victory, people get excited about that, and then they'll join and they'll want to know, how can we build on this? How can we do something more? And then you ratchet it up. You say, well, okay, the first time we got this little thing, how about next time we do something bigger? And I think the duopoly's message through media is all on getting butts in seats. It's all in getting people elected, especially to Congress. Like we were saying earlier, they almost never talk about local offices. I can say that there has literally been in my county cases where seats have gone no one at all was running. No Republican, no Democrat, no nothing. They literally had to appoint someone later because no one ran for it. No one was paying attention. So if we can find those local things and get involved, that's good. But it's also not just elections. It's these issue campaigns. And sometimes moving a big organization is actually a really big win for us, because they're getting that message out there that's helping us. And if you're having trouble picking what is kind of the small winnable goal to start with, that's another reason to reach out to your state party or to the national party, because there are a lot of really great organizers in the Green Party that have been doing this for decades at this point. And unfortunately, sometimes the work isn't always known nationally, but not just because of media suppression and things, but also because Greens also tend to be involved in these other organizations. I'm going to say Fair Vote because I can't think of one offhand, but let's just say Green's involved in Fair Vote. And so when things like that happen, when they switch their policy and they start advocating these things, sometimes that switch was generated by Greens on the ground in those organizations. They push the Overton window to the left, so to speak, right? They push that conversation, and maybe people don't realize that it was the Greens pushing it, but it did happen, and that had a very important effect on the public debate and, of course, public policy down the line. So those are all very important wins, even if the media doesn't necessarily talk about it. We know it's a win, and we should use that to put our message out to others and say, look at this win that we're doing, that Democrats are not doing, that Republicans are not doing, that all these organizations are not doing. The organizations were making compromises with the industry, and we were the ones pushing them. You want to join us and help us push harder next time.
Yeah,